Are you having one of those WTF moments? Does the world seem like it's just in an instant turned upside down? Are you experiencing feelings of fear and uncertainty as it seems like you just got clocked in the head by something coming out of left field? Well then, you may be in the midst of your own personal awakening. What does that mean? Well, let's jump into it. Welcome back, Adepts and Initiates. If you haven't yet, go ahead and click on that subscribe button so you can stay in constant communication and contact with the content that comes out on this channel. All right, everyone. Welcome back, Grand Rising and Great Tidings. Today we are talking about the ever-evolving fun topic of awakenings. Now, when we talk about awakenings, often we think of things in terms of becoming just more aware of something, right? However, there's a lot more to awakenings than just merely our observation or connection to what's happening around us. Indeed, it actually is an awakening that happens from the deep slumber or just not being conscious and aware of what's happening within. What we're going to talk about today is a little bit about this whole concept of what a spiritual awakening is. What are some of the telltale signs that you're in the midst of one, which we all are. It just depends on the stages. We'll talk a little bit more about the stages of awakenings and then how it is that we can actually begin to work with this with a little more ease and grace. As we look at an awakening, what does that actually mean? Well, awakenings are very much like you would think. You know, if we are asleep, if we're in a state of slumber, we're not really very cognizant of what's happening around us. In fact, we're pretty much oblivious to it. And so there could be a fire, there could be a party. I mean, I've had times when I've been out on nights back when I was drinking heavily and I would pass out at a club. Now that's a whole nother thing entirely. So one of the things that I like to use as an example of an awakening is a personal story. It's my own awakening. This was happening when I was living in Okinawa, and this was from 2002 to 2005. I experienced something that was really very jarring, right? It was my dark night of the soul, if you will. One of them, at least. And so I was there and I had lost a very close relative, my Uncle Dave, who was very much like a father figure. And for having grown up without a father present in the home, that was pretty big for me. And so when Uncle Dave passed, I went into a very dark place because I hadn't experienced a death that was so close, that was so meaningful, and that was so that I was so connected to. And in that passing, then something shifted, right? All of a sudden, my world view changed overnight. In fact, within a moment. You know, a world with my Uncle Dave around was something where I could have fun. I could take things less seriously. I could, have support and a role model in my life that helped me to figure things out. When he passed, abruptly things changed. And for me, that was pretty significant because I had choices to make in my life and I wasn't necessarily making them. I was kind of hiding out from them. And so as I then realized that I had these choices to make, action to take, I decided to choose differently, something more, because I was in the depth of that, the mourning and the sadness. I also felt inspired because now I wanted to live my life. I have this one life to live. If I'm going to take anything from the passing of Uncle Dave, it's going to be that I have choices to make the life the absolute best that it possibly can be. And so I did. And as that happened, my entire trajectory of life shifted. Instead of going back to graduate school, I decided to go into personal training, to be able to help people with their health and to be able to support people who are facing things in terms of dis-ease in their lives. And that sent me in a very different direction. In fact, I would not be here now today if it had not been for the passing of my Uncle Dave. And so in that then, these new parts of myself really started to come forward. I started to learn more about me in terms of my curiosity, in terms of my the desire to just wonder about things, to investigate, to really be present within my body and within myself and with others as well. And as this became a practice in everyday life, that is what has led me on this life's path to be here now. And now, using this example is a perfect model for what it is we're going to be talking about with an awakening, where we are sleeping, we are deep in slumber, if you will, right? If we're talking about awakening, its opposite would be sleeping. Now, sleeping is just being not aware and unconscious to certain things in life, particularly patterns of everyday living. Now, where this really comes into play, back to my story, I was eating unhealthfully, I was eating junk, I was eating fast food, I was drinking heavily, and in the passing of Uncle Dave, things shifted. And I realized that I am responsible and in charge of my own health and well-being. And so as that happened, this is that first stage of it, the initiation, where if an awakening is to become more connected to, attentive of these patterns of the past, the specific pattern for me was these coping strategies. I was stressed, I was uncertain, and how I coped with that was with eating and with drinking. And now that blew me up from where I'm today at about 192 usually. I was about 250 pounds, and a lot of that just was the weight that I carried from stress and how I dealt with it. That no longer worked, right? It was a strategy I had used in life and it no longer worked. And this is stage one of an awakening, the initiation, where the patterns of the past make themselves known in our present moment. The thing about that is what got us here won't necessarily get us there. Meaning that the choices that we've made, these behaviors of everyday life, have served its purpose. And if we want more than what we have right now, then something has to change. For me, that choice was a matter of, well, do I continue to eat crap and drink junk, or do I begin to make these shifts? After his passing, I took that responsibility on. I decided to cook more for myself. I decided to drink, water instead of beer all the time. I decided to exercise more, doing everyday things from walking to work and back, as well as going to the local gym and exercising and, strengthening my body. Yet I also strengthened my mind, and I opened up areas of my emotion that I was, up until then, kind of unwilling to really take on. So I was choosing things differently. And those decisions matter, coming into form, coming into body. And that's the second stage of the initiation, is our reckoning. Identifying that we do have choices to make and responsibility to take. Because when we take those responsibilities of the choices and decisions for eating junk and drinking junk and so on and so forth, then that is also to a certain degree freeing, because I have other decisions I can make. And as I chose into living a life of health and well-being and vitality, that moved me from that second stage into the third stage, which is our emergence. Now, the emergence is where, because we're choosing differently, not just making these choices from the patterns of our past, usually based upon a belief about ourselves, we're choosing something differently. And in doing so, that shifts us. Something internal has shifted, and so our external world, the world around us, begins to change as well. Instead of going to the bar and hanging out with friends every Friday, Saturday, and sometimes Sunday, I decided to go to the beach. I decided to go camping. I decided to be at the gym. I decided to join sports teams. All these things really started to unfold. And in this emergence stage, it really is a beautiful period, because we get to learn and to connect and to know more about ourselves. And that is something that imprints upon the very cells of our body. We are changing, and so our world begins to change, and we learn more about the depth and the breadth of who we truly are. And I did. I realized that I loved things in Okinawa, the culture, the food, the people, things that I hadn't necessarily really explored very much in that first year that I was there, prior to my uncle passing. Now, as I did this, I continued on for the remaining 2 years to going to dragon boat practices and going to the gym and all these other things. And that shifted me into the assimilation phase. This last phase of our awakening allows us to create almost a discipline and practice of our presence, the true essence of who we are. Because what the awakening really is moving from a place of our ego, the identity that we've established to survive in this world, and into the aspects of our essence, where we are best able, apt, and capable of really bringing all these things together into a place of balance, into a place of harmony. Now, as we talk a little bit more about this, we're going to go piece by piece, going into each aspect and stage of the awakening. So I'll link to those videos in the bottom. For now, though, love and aloha, take care, and ahui ho.